Good evening, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's really great that you all can attend this very special meeting that's been set up by our Consul General. For those who are streaming, thank you very much for being on board. And if you have any questions that you may want to ask, please do them in the chat room and they'll be answered later in the program. But without any further ado, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the Consul General of Italy, Fabrizio di Michele.
Thank you, Angelo. It's a really pleasure to be here, and I want to thank my friend Angelo Vivo for helping out this the organization of this event and the Consul Citizen Foundation for hosting us. We've been discussing with some of you and some other Italian American friends who are not here today the idea of creating a kind of regular dialogue with the Italian American business community. And frankly speaking, I think that this is the right timing from the institution's point of view to try and launch this dialogue. Of course, I know that in the past, some of my colleagues, my predecessors, have promoted isolated initiatives in the business area for the simple fact that the Italian American business community is very big, very successful. What we would like to do actually is to create something more regular and structured. And we wanted to start from a more, let's say, broader and more institutional presentation, because we think it's useful. But if there is an interest on your side, you here represent a very small percentage of Italian American businessmen here in New York and the tri-state. What we would like to do in the coming months is to organize more targeted meetings, bringing here, or wherever we do it actually, bringing to New York Italian companies and arranging meetings sector by sector, kind of B2B, in a way arranged in a way which might attract people from different business sectors, let's say so. First of all, I'd like to introduce colleagues who will make presentations with me, because I'm just introducing it actually. First, here we have the director of the Italian Trade Agency, Antonino Laspina. Thank you, Antonino. And video connection from Italy, there is the chief representative of Banca Italia for North America, Carmine Porello. Now, the very fact that he is here to talk to you when it's midnight, past midnight in Italy, I think tells a lot about how much importance we attach to this meeting. So there are three main reasons why we thought that we should launch this dialogue. The first I just mentioned to you was the fact that you are a big community, very well, let's say, represented in the tri-state, but also very powerful and covering basically all different sectors. It's financial, there is construction, there is digital, there is new tech, everything. The second reason that we mentioned in our the one pager that we sent out together with the invitation is that sometimes we perceive a certain lack of knowledge of what's the Italian economic potential today on the side of the American businessman. So at the end of the day, you are American businessman, and we thought it would be useful to try and fill a little bit this gap. We already shared some key elements, and Mr. Laspina from the trade agency will definitely elaborate on these issues. What I want to stress with you is that Italy, of course, particularly in New York, but all over the United States, is very much identified with the 3F. It's food, fashion, and furniture or design. But apart from this, and automotive, which is well known and recognized as well, is much more, actually. I realize very often talking to Italian American businessmen that they don't know that the main export item of Italy to the United States is machine tools, it's mechanical machinery. And one of the other main items is pharmaceuticals. And we are the first producers in Europe, one of the biggest all over the world. And Italy, indeed, it's the second manufacturer or industrial power in Europe after Germany. In terms of export of machine tools, we are the fourth all over the world after Germany, Japan, and China. And there's much more. When we talk about the green economy, circular economy, which is now the sexiest word to say, but it's also the biggest challenge, not only in the United States, but all over the world for all the companies. Well, Italy, in terms of circular economy, is the leading country in Europe. Italy is already basically recycling 80% for urban and special refuse, which to me means that we have a lot to do, lots of potential actually, in terms of technologies and best practices to share with companies and global institutions in New York and in the tri-state. But Italy is also one of the biggest world powers in space technology. And we have a very well-structured cooperation with the United States. Actually, we are the main interlocutor of the United States in Europe. We are the first producers, as I said before, of pharmaceuticals, the first producers of the boating sector, a strong partner of the United States in the military and industrial sector. Let me just mention the billions of public procurements with military ships and military helicopters that have been finalized in the past few years. And I'm just picking up some examples here. What I want to say here is that there is a tendency among the American businessmen to look at Italy through some, I would say, old-fashioned spectacles. And I don't want to say now that bureaucracy is over in Italy. No, after 1 year, I think that we are doing better than New York as a city. And I'm not underestimating the problems with slow justice. We are going through a very complex reform of our justice systems to make civil and criminal trials faster, because in Italy, the slow justice is a huge obstacle for investments, for foreign investments. So I don't want to underestimate this. I don't want to underestimate the issue that the south of Italy, infrastructure-wise, service-wise, is really below the average. But at the very same time, for whoever or any businessman really interested in looking into the possibilities in Italy, you will find very highly qualified human resources, not expensive compared to the United States, for instance, and a huge array of industrial and technological capacity. Sometimes we're talking about very high technological age. There are some niches, maybe they are very small, very specialized, but that's the reason why we have very small enterprises exporting machine tools all over the world. It's because they are competitive and they're technologically the most competitive. But there is a third reason why we thought it was the time for having this kind of dialogue and hopefully making breakthrough. And this is the fact that after COVID, the economic and social consequences of the pandemic, the European Union has launched the most ambitious and most generous also program ever actually conceived. And this is the Next Generation EU. Next Generation EU, first of all, it's a fund, means money. But this money comes and will come to every single member states linked with strings, actually, which is the requirement of some reforms. And this is what's going on right now in Italy. And the reason why we wanted to have this discussion is that based on the next EU Generation Fund, the Italian government under Prime Minister Draghi has finalized a national resilience recovery plan. And this is something which it's Carmine Porello of Banca Italia, which will give you a presentation. So basically, the three reasons boils down to one ideal objective. So you are a year, just a small embryo, what we would like to see of Italian American businessmen ready to interact with us, the institutions, with a view also to focusing in a much more concrete ways on business-to-business conversations. So we do this, Mr. Laspina does this as a job here, but I think that using the Italian-American channel is, in a way, an advantage for us, institutions, and I hope it can be an advantage for you. That's why I want to create this privileged channel. And then where this will lead, we'll see. It depends very much on us and you. So without further ado, I spoke more than I should have. I would like to give the floor now to Antonino Laspina, and then it will be Carmine Porello to pick it up on the recovery plan. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. It's really a privilege for me to have this opportunity to highlight some of the elements that characterize at this moment Italy. And I think that this meeting is very important because during my career, I've been always experiencing the fact that there is not a very updated image of Italy. In whatever country I've been serving, there is always something that is the picture of some years before. And even I think in the United States. So this is a very good opportunity for me to try to give you some updated picture of what is Italy today. And then, as already mentioned by the Consul General, the colleague from the Banca d'Italia is going to highlight and give some details about the funds that are coming from the European Union and are going to make easier or even more possible the matching of the Italian capitals, government capitals with the capitals that are supposed to come from the United States. I have prepared several slides. Of course, it's gonna take more than time that has been fixed. It's like my time, but this is a contribution that I'd like to give as the organizer to all of you, so you can have a better picture of what is Italy today. Let's start from the GDP, for instance. Recently has been mentioned the fact that the Italian GDP is by far larger than Russian GDP. And for many people, it was a surprise because we are definitely one among the G7, one of the largest economies. And I think this is something very interesting. 2.6 trillion of US dollars, making the Italian economy one of the largest in the world among the developed countries. But also there is an important data that is related to the export. 516 billion US dollars, making Italy one of the largest exporters in the world. The consumer spending is 1.9 trillion US dollars. The stock of the investment made by foreign companies in Italy has a total of 469.3 billion US dollars. So in a country that during the years, particularly the last 20, 30 years, has been able to attract any kind of capital coming from different countries, not only European countries, but also countries that are in many different continents. We can summarize saying that it's the third largest economy in the Eurozone and the 8th globally economy in terms of size. Labor force, qualified labor force, I would say, is 22 million people. This is another interesting surprise, because if we consider, for instance, the Global Innovation Index by WRPO, we see that Italy ranks in the top 10% for 14 categories. I don't think that usually we are.
It's a page before. Before.
That's fast. Okay, so you can see this is a surprise, because you can see there is a positioning of Italy very high in world ranking in sectors that usually people are not associating with the structure of the Italian economy. And we can start from ecological sustainability, trade diversification at market scale, domestic industry diversification, and so on. As I mentioned, you will have these papers, so I don't want to take much more of the time that has been fixed for me. And let's go for Italy and the US, strong trading partners. At the end of the year 2021, Italy ranks as the 12th largest global supplier to the United States and the 4th largest European supplier. The total amount of export made by Italian companies, the Italian system to the United States, is $61 billion. The export of the United States to Italy is a mere, I would say, $21.7 billion, which means that Italy has a very large trade surplus vis-a-vis United States. We have seen also great growth, 23.4% of imports from Italy in 2021 versus 2020, which means that we were able to bypass the value of the year 2019. And at the same time, there has been also an interesting growth of the imports from Italy to the United States. This is another interesting, picture related to the main export to the United States by sector. Usually we have in mind Italy in food and wine and in the fashion. And as I can see, the large share of the Italian export to the United States is made by what we can call medium and high tech. Of course, I will not say that the value of the food and wine, which is up to $16.5 billion, or the sector of the fashion, is not important. But there are sectors already mentioned by the Consul General, for instance, in the industrial machinery, the transportation, what we call the high tech, are already interesting sectors where we expect a continuous growth of export from Italy to the United States. Let's have a look at the foreign direct investments, USA, Italy. We have elaborated. Go back. Okay. We have elaborated this kind of statistics considering the data published by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and Italy was the 17th largest source of FDI flow into the United States with 1.6 billion in 2020. Of course, we have data related to the total stock of the source of FDI flow into Italy from the United States that are $42.9 billion. The United States have been a destination of stock from Italy for $31 billion. But what we can see is a continuous growth, which means that although Italy is not the country of the big corporation, of the medium corporation, we have an interesting phenomenon that what we call the pocket multinationals, the Italian medium-sized companies that have already that ability to be able to set up small-sized factories all around the world. They've been successful in having investment in the United States. One data that is characterizing this situation is the fact that while the export is basically interesting 3 or 4 states where we have a very big penetration, the heavy investment in the United States has involved more than 25 states. And we are not talking, as I mentioned, about the ENI, Enel, Fincantieri, and other companies. But we have a lot of companies that are in the mechanics, mechatronics, that have been making investments, small size investment, in order to be very close in terms of supply chain to the leader that is managing the supply chain. So the proximity to the player, main player, has been one of the main characters that has inspired the Italian investment of the small and size companies. Okay. Why invest in Italy? And this is, of course, there are many reasons already. Some of them have been mentioned by the Consul General. But for instance, it's important to know that the GDP is still in the Eurozone and is 6th in the world. I would mention also, for instance, this is very important. First, in EU patents growth recently. So a lot of companies have been able to register new patents, and the Italian ingenuity now is proved more and more than in the past. Because maybe now the Italians have much more, let's say, knowledge and awareness of the fact that whatever you are generating in your research center, you have to protect. In the past, maybe they were coming with some kind of technological solution, but because of the structure of the country, they were not paying attention to this registration of the patents. And there are many other aspects that I would like to submit to your attention. Leonardo, for instance, is one of the giant companies, a global player in aerospace, defense, and security, is the 3rd in the European Union, and is 4th in the world for expenditure in research and development. There are also some other aspects of why invest in Italy. The second manufacturing system in Europe, the first system for jewelry production, the first for super yacht production, the second in the world for fashion industry. And when I say the second in the world for fashion industry, I have to consider that there are a lot of nations that can be more competitive than Italy. Nevertheless, Italy is still maintaining the structural manufacturing fashion, of course, high-level fashion. And contrary to the general opinion of many people, they say that the products are manufactured in China and then distributed and marketed by the Italian companies. This is not true. It's not true, at least for the top important companies, because the Italian quality is made in the region like Tuscany, Veneto, Marche. When we talk about mass production, then okay, we can refer to some production that is out of Italy. But the top brand, you can be sure that the manufacturing system is in Italy, in the regions that they've just mentioned. So the manufacturing system is there. And it's important also to mention for the implication that has for the touristic investment, the investment in the tourism industry, is the fact that we are first, according to the UNESCO World Heritage ranking, in the number of the UNESCO sites. And at the same time, we are number 1 in Europe for what we call the cultural companies, companies that are operating in the cultural world. Everybody knows that we are strong in this field. Whatever is related to art and music or other kind of artistic expressions, there Italy is a leader. There are many other, I think, positions that are of certain interest, but I will, of course, make available for you this paper. And I would like to go, for instance, for another important index, that is the FDI Confidence Index, which makes Italy a very attractive country. Because Italy ranks 8th in the 2021 AT Kearney FDI Confidence Index, one of the most prestigious index in terms of attractivity for a national system. And there are many other aspects of this ability to attract. If you see, there are nations that are basically considered like more attractive than Italy, but at the end, Italy is there in the 8th position, and many other countries that in certain conditions, I will mention, for instance, Singapore, Belgium, Norway, Austria. There are many countries that in the public opinion, they are much more with a higher level of attractiveness, but it's not the case. And there's another index that is a Arnold Ipsos Nation Brands Index that makes Italy always in a very high position. And as a matter of fact, in the year 2021, Italy's ranking jumps from 6 to 4, and the United States advances from 10 to 8. So this is one of the index that says that it's much more attractive for certain sectors, Italy compared to the United States. It's been mentioned always like Achilles, tendon, the fact that the law, for instance, regulating the labor has been one of the weak points of the Italian system. But recently, there have been a lot of innovation in terms of regulations for the contract. And everybody now is very much interested in knowing the fact that the human talent that is generated by the Italian universities is proving now that it can compete with any kind of human talent that is coming from the most prestigious universities. As a matter of fact, I would like to mention that Bocconi and Politecnico di Milano, Politecnico di Torino, Sapienza in Roma, many other universities are now able to compete in terms of, let's say, seriousness of the studies with some important institutions here in the United States. What is the purpose of this policy of attracting capitals? Some people, they say, but where Italy would like to get investment? Basically, Italy is open to any kind of investment in every kind of sectors because it's a very much, diversified economy. So if you can propose a particular investment, it will be possible that in one region in Italy, one area in Italy, there will be some possibilities of expanding your business. I have here mentioned some of the sectors that will be renewable energies, logistics, consider the strategic position of Italy at the center of the Mediterranean Sea. So logistics becomes always very important, linking different continents. There is green tech, advanced machinery. So sectors that are in medium tech and also high tech, for instance, aerospace, automotive. What is important is the fact that then I think my colleague from Banca d'Italia is going to highlight in the great details is the fact that there are a lot of incentives that are provided by the Italian government, the Italian institutions to the potential investors. And this can be included in large investments in investment crisis areas, tax benefits, investment in research and development. I have here with me my assistant, Greg, that has been working for us for a couple of years and is the one in charge of having this kind of B2B with potential investors. And is the one that is going to give the right channel for any potential investors of the institution that should be contacted. Actually, it's going to be your business angel in case you have some ideas, and then he can define what are the incentives for some specific sectors. At the end, I will tell you that we are a government agency under the aegis of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with offices in the United States. The office in New York is the office that is coordinating the activity of the other offices. I'm the Chief Trade Commissioner, and I'm glad to be here, and I hope that I've contributed to this better knowledge by your side of the Italian situation today. Thank you. As already mentioned, also mentioned by the Consul General, the Carmine Porello, that is the Director of the Office for North America of Banca d'Italia. Carmine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Antonino. It's really a pleasure, to join you this evening, even if this time only remotely. So my goal this evening is to give you a broad and hopefully brief presentation of the Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Why? Well, this is an historical, of historical relevance plan for Italy, either in terms of size, either in terms of content. Let me stress that I will not enter on the single programs that, as you can imagine, are quite different and advancing in these very days. Of course, we will be more than happy if there would be interest from your side, of course, to organize new opportunities of discussion involving the relevant Italian institution to address your eventual detailed question. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. Okay, hopefully you can see my first slide. So the outline of my presentation, we will first, take a look at the European rules. What are the available resources and the expected macroeconomic impact? Then we will give, we will analyze the structure and the content of the Italian plan, devoting also some comment in the time available to the plan governance and monitoring and the result achieved so far. So first of all, the European context. Why are these resources available, and what are also the expected macroeconomic impacts? The Consul General has already mentioned, next and EU. That is actually the European response, to the pandemic crisis. This is a temporary, right now, instrument through which Europe is going to mobilize resources for over 800 billion. The aim is to finance reforms and investment, to support the recovery, but also to increase the resilience of the member states. So you may think about the 800 billion as a relevant figure, because it actually is more than 6% of the European GDP. These resources are going to be committed until the end of 2023, but the measure will be implemented by June the 26th. How does it work? Well, actually, the European Commission is already borrowing, from the capital market on behalf of the European Union and the member state, using a diversified strategy, different kind of financial tools. But, gross issues have already been equal to over 100 billion. What are the main pillar of the National Resilience and Recovery Plan? Well, actually, every national and RRPs, so for each member state, must define reform and investment in 6 areas of intervention. These are, to speed up the green transition, to boost the digital transformation, to develop a smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth, to deepen the social and territorial cohesion. The pandemic has showed us the importance, to take care of course, of whole the health system and its resilience. Also having in our mind the policies for future generation. So every plan in each member state must also address the challenges that have been identified in the 2019 and 2020 country-specific recommendation. This is an exercise that is run every year by the European Commission. To focus each member state weakness and area of reform, to strengthen the potential growth, and to also allocate green and digital asset at least for the 37% and 20% of the budget, respectively. All the measures have also to respect the principle do not significant harm to the environment. Let me stress that the timeline of the plan is very stringent for approval and implementation. The disbursement of fund by the EU is in 6-month tranches, and it is subject to compliance with predefined milestone and targets in terms of reforms made by the member states and quantitative macroeconomic variable achieved by each of them. So some important moment for the Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan. It has been approved in July by the EU Council. Then Italy has already received the first fund last August, and then the request for payment has been sent to the European Commission. It's you have probably heard that Italy is the first beneficiary of the common funds. This is true in terms of the amount of resources. It's not true in terms of the share of GDP. Of course, Italy, I mean, being one of the biggest country in the European Union, but I mean, some minor countries have an higher, funds to GDP ratio received. It's especially important that well, some of these funds will be in grants, almost 70 billion, and some of them will be loans with I mean, very low interest rate. It's important to stress that some national resources will be also deployed, I mean, to finance projects that are not covered by the European funds, but that are deemed valid for the restart. So if we sum up all the funds available, we are totaling almost 236 billion euros. This is a huge amount of money. If you think as a share of GDP, it's more than 14% of GDP of Italy. So some preliminary assessment of the macro impact of the plan in Italy has been made. And according what are by now, I mean, still preliminary estimate, we can say that, well, having in mind that over 60% of the new projects are for public investment, you do know very well that public investment have a high economic multiplier. This means that for 1 unit of public investment, I mean, the impact on the economy is far, I mean, big if you compare to the other, I mean, component of demand. If you look at the table, you can see that by 2023 onwards, the impact on GDP of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan in Italy is going to be, I mean, close to 2% of GDP, and then higher in the year after 2023, reaching 3.6 percentage point. This is additional growth, I mean, that we will enjoy, I mean, hopefully by, I mean, the allocation of this fund. This is because of the effect of the reform undertaken, and of course the impact on research and innovation that will boost the total factor productivity in the longer term. Also, the annual potential growth of the country would increase on average by about more than 1 percentage point over the next decade. But what is the structure and the content of the Italian plan? Well, it is the allocation of the fund. It's made of 6 missions and 16 components. Each component is made of investment and reform. Then there are 3 strategic axes that basically are, invest the plan across, the board. These are digitalization and innovation, ecological transition, and social inclusion. And then there are three transversal strategic priorities. These are the gender parity, youth, and territorial cohesion. To give you an example of the structure of the Italian plan, I would present you, for example, the second mission. So we have said that it's the second out of 6 missions. So the second mission is about the green revolution and the ecological transition. It's worth, almost 60 billion euros. It is made of 4 components. One is for the sustainable agriculture and the circular economy. The other is for the energy transition and the sustainable mobility. Then there are funds available for the energy efficiency and building requalification and the protection of land and water resources. So, of course, this fund will be allocated in the decarbonization of the transport system, but also the buildings and, as I mentioned, the agri-food sector, for the promotion of renewables, for the community energy and self-consumption, for the enhancement of waste disposal system. Of course, if you, will be interested, I can share with you also the material on the other mission and the other components and resources of every mission. But I would love to spend some words on the reform, because this is another pillar of the plan. It is so important for Italy because we have to step up the reform in some area of the country. And in this time, almost a third of the milestone and the target of the overall plan require reform approval, to basically receive money from the European Union. So this time is, a great opportunity to really accelerate on reforms. But what are the most important reforms that are envisaged by the plan? Well, there are some horizontal reform, for example, in the public administration and especially civil justice. There are some qualifying reform in the competition, so opening up some sector, to competition, and simplification, to ease, the life of enterprises in Italy, and some sectoral reform. Again, some material is available and can be shared on this regard. Let me also add that tax reform and again, the revision of the social safety net are not part of the plan, but will pair it. Only few words on the geographical, composition of resource. Well, in total, about 82 billion euros will be destined, for the South. We're talking about, 40% of resources that can be identified geographically, including the complementary fund. Some insight are in this slide. On the plan governance and monitoring, I would only like to stress that the coordination is by the President of Italian Council of Ministers, and it is also paired by a steering committee with some substitute powers, in meaning that the procedure are going to be fast, and especially, they're going to be faster than they used to be in, let's say, normal times. There will be an institution, the General Accounting Department, monitoring it, and it will be implemented by different administration with some lead mission unit. The payment of the semi-annual installment is linked to the achievement of milestone and target. As I said before, this will be qualitative and quantitative indicator. And there will be a strong evaluation by the Commission, which may also suspend, the grant disbursement in whole or in part, if this milestone and target are not achieved. I think that I would. I think that I would stop here to leave some room, for any kind of question that may arise. And of course, I'm right now I am in Italy for a business trip, but I will be soon back in New York. So I hopefully, next time we will also, have the chance, to see each other personally. Thank you very much for your attention by now.
I don't know if there are questions. I think we got one.
There are two, yes.
Two online.
One is, I think, is for
maybe
for Carmine. One is for Greg that can give some reply.
I think you have to come here. I don't know if Carmine can hear you without the microphone.
Okay, the first question is, how does an American company take advantage of the EU recovery?
So if I heard it, no, ho capito, Antonino, sento un po' di rimbombo.
Did you understand?
Okay. Yes, I did. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there are several, programs that are envisaged, inside the plan. So each of them is going to be carried by different administration. For example, there will be some ministries involved, and so there will be some tender that will be opened, to enterprises. So my understanding is that the European Union is open to enterprises coming from the different countries around the world, and so there will not be any kind of discrimination about country of origin for this tender. But any kind of program will have its own rules and procedure. So I think that, for example, next time we meet, we could dive into some example, some concrete example. For example, in waste management, there will be some tender, devoted to that, with some qualification, needed, to access it. And so I think that also involving the right institution in Italy that is going, to take care of the peculiar program that we are talking about, we can, understand how to involve, of course, even foreign players in this regard. But there will be needed a lot of, expertise and capital and experience, and some of it, is going to also to come from abroad. But let me also stress that this plan is is a great opportunity to make Italy, even more competitive and more attractive in terms of, localization, in our country to produce, of course, goods and services we are already competitive in producing. It will enhance our, productivity. It will enhance, the human and hard capital availability in the country. So I think that the opportunity for foreign operators, and especially United States one, will be huge. Let me also stress that this is a time when we have experienced so important disruption, for example, in the supply chain in the recent years, and we have also appreciated the importance of resilient supply chains. So for example, some Italian companies are let's say discussing their localization strategy in the near future, even considering to move in to near shore some production. I think that moving from the relative competitive advantage, United States and Italy have a long way to improve their bilateral ties on this regard.
Thank you. Just to integrate very quickly, if you think about all the public procurement tenders which will come up in the coming months and years in the infrastructure, digital sector, or green transition, many of these projects will be, when we talk about public procurement, will be supervised by one ministry, the Ministry of Economic Development. So there is not one single website where we can address you, and you have a look there and you know everything. It's more complex. But there is one ministry which will supervise the implementation of the single projects. And what I mean is that these should be one of the main channels for getting more detailed information on the projects.
Yeah, the second question, Greg, is for you. Is it possible to fast-track the red tape to start up a company in Italy?
The answer to that is yes. At this point right now, you probably have something like the equivalent of an S corp or an LLP. They've simplified the process to the point where you can either do it yourself online, or you can hire a CPA in Italy, which can do it for a few $1,000s, and you will have your company set up within 2 weeks to a month. If you're looking at larger projects, we do have programs in place that, when you're working with our economic development agency in Italia, they can assist you in the whole red tape, bureaucratic process, gaining permits, they coordinate with the local regions. So the process is becoming quite a simplified. So it really depends on the size of the project, where you're investing, but the answer is yes. The red tape can be fast tracked.
Thanks. How will individual projects be determined, the process, and how will you measure both the return on investment and delivery of the targeted return on investment? How will you measure the return on investment and monitor it?
Talking about the national recovery plan. Yeah. Carmine, did you get the question? I'm sorry.
No, I didn't hear you.
Because without micro, I think you can't hear. Not only, but you give it to me and I will.
How will specific investment projects, we determine the process.
So how would be specific investment projects be determined? The process in choosing the investment.
And how do we monitor return on investment from the specific project?
And how the government is going to monitor the return on this investment, project by project.
So it's probably useful to give you an example, and the example is that, for example, as the Consul General has already explained, I mean, there is one ministry that is actually coordinating, I mean, the process, and so there will be a tender, I mean, for participating, for example, in a project of electrifying, I mean, public transport in an area, in an urban area, I mean, and then we have not, I don't think that we have mentioned, I mean, the monitoring will be in terms of, you know, how this money is going to be spent. And well, it's not going to be, I mean, evaluated on a, you know, single project outcome in terms of course, I mean, the evolution of the expenditure is going to be monitored according, I mean, to the plan, but it's not going to be monitored, I mean, the single program impact. We're talking about hundreds of projects, so it's going to be a macro impact of it's not going to be evaluated on an investment perspective, but of course there will be rules, of course there will be, I mean, the finance will be tracked, and I mean, but administratively, I mean, not, I mean, as an investment point of view. I don't know if I answered, I mean, your question, but the impact. Okay, thank you.
But basically, we're talking about such a big amount of money. This is like a Marshall Plan of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay, even more probably in terms of money. If you think about every components and the money allocated, we're talking about billions for every components, which means tens of, sometimes hundreds of projects. So there would be, there is a monitoring task force at the Presidency of the Council under the Prime Minister, and there is one particular ministry involved when it's about infrastructure and main public procurements. But then there are local administrations, regions of cities, which are involved in every different projects. Think about the green transition, ecological investments, which multiply the actors. Surely doesn't simplify the view from an investor's point of view. But we're talking about such an amount of money, and such an historical, actually, reform process. Every single institution is being involved right now. Because part of this money is being already spent, actually. Other question?
I'd like to clarify the fact that in addition to the funds that are coming from the European Union, there is already a very qualified system of attraction of capitals from the United States and other countries. Because usually there is a project. The project is going to be evaluated by the company that is called Invitalia together with the ITA, the Italian Trade Agency. And then for whatever is the project of investment, it could be provided also some money, funds, capitals that have nothing to do with the PNRR. Because this is the mainstream of the coming years, but still there are some projects that are going on. So sometimes this is a project that is about some specific sectors and going to be of certain interest for certain regions. And this can be, held by the local authorities with the assistance of the Italian Trade Agency in Italia, which is the agency in Italy that is going to make the evaluation of the potential project, and also is going to evaluate what kind of public funds could be allocated for the definition of the project. And usually it depends on the social contribution of the project, the sectors, if it's related to some regions of the South, some sectors, for instance, of the investment is done in some companies that are, bankruptcy company and that they have to resume the activity. So the evaluation is also for the kind of contribution that is going to be to the local economy, particularly in terms of local economy. So there are two lines of investment. We don't have to consider only the PNRR, but there is already a lot of money and funds that are usually supplying, the funds to combine to match the ordinary investment that people are making in Italy.
Aspetta.
Carmine, stavo per concludere, vuoi dire qualcosa?
No, I was only thinking that it was probably useful to get into some details, regarding the plan, because the programs, the pillars, the programs, and the reforms are really a lot. Many. And so, if I can share again my screen, I'm gonna. I would love, to show, to the audience this portal. Actually, its name is Italia Domani, and of course there is also an English version of the website. And here you can find some example, of the single investment that are made. And of course, we can provide you, the address of the website and how, the project are going to be monitored. And there are some news on the installment and the funds, transferred for the European Commission. But I think that for you, the most important part is this one. The different investment that are envisaged, for example, for the transition through Industry 4.0, all the ultra wide band. So there are, a lot of them, and they are run by different institutions with different rules. So again, I think that it is worth paying a visit to this website, to understand more about the micro articulation of the plan. Thank you, Fabrizio.
Hey, Cameron, I think we can share with the Columbus Foundation these presentations for everybody interested to have access to it. And of course, we are available for more specific questions, because we might not be able to answer the question, but we know we have to channel these questions to get the answers. You have to think about this as a huge work in progress in Italy and the European Union, actually in Europe, and not something diluted in 3 decades. This money is coming already, as I said, and will have to be spent by 2026. So the issue is that I think it's worthwhile to pay some attention, devote some resources to what's going on in Italy with different administrations and public procurements and the way this plan is being implemented. And that was the main aim of this presentation, to make you aware of the potential. Not all of this money probably will go in public procurements open to anybody or to American companies, but due to the European and Italian rules, most public tenders are open internationally. So as Carmine said, there are possibilities for everybody. not to mention the possibilities coming from partnership with Italian companies already present on the territory. So we don't want to make it too long and make you regret coming here. I hope it was interesting. And as I said, next time, if there is an interest, what we like to do, notably with the trade agency, is to maybe organize some business presentations. Companies coming from Italy, specific sectors, so that also the invitations might be targeted according to the interest from that sector. And if this works out, we can really repeat it and expand it to other sectors in the following months. Thank you very much for your presence here. Buonanotte, direi.
Buonanotte a tutti, è stato un piacere. It's been really a pleasure, to join you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.